In the shadowed valleys of eastern France, where the Meuse River winds through patchwork fields, a girl named Jeanne d'Arc entered the world around January 6, 1412. Born in the humble village of Domremy-le-Pucelle, later dubbed, of the Maid, in her honor, Joan, as history would anglicize her name, was the third of 5 children to Jacques d'Arc and Isabelle Romé, devout peasant farmers eking out a living from tenant lands. EF 42E7. The year was deep into the Hundred Years' War, a brutal Anglo-French conflict that had ravaged the continent since 1337. England, under the ambitious Henry V, had crushed the French at Agincourt in 1415, claiming the French throne through the Treaty of Troyes in 1420. France fractured into Armagnac loyalists to the Dauphin Charles VII and Burgundian allies of the English, turning border villages like Domremy into precarious frontiers. Raids were commonplace. In 1428, Burgundian forces burned the local church, forcing the D'Arcs to flee. Young Joan, illiterate but steeped in her mother's tales of saints and her father's Stoic faith, grew amid this chaos, herding sheep and spinning wool, her world a tapestry of prayer and peril. DC 641 f. Joan's transformation began not with steel, but with whispers from the divine. At 13, in her family's garden, she first heard voices, clear, commanding, and accompanied by radiant lights. Street. Michael the Archangel appeared first, followed by Sts. Catherine of Alexandria and Margaret of Antioch, virgin martyrs whose relics adorned local shrines. These counselors, as she called them, urged piety, attend Mass, confess sins, shun vanity. But by 1428, as Orléans teetered under English siege, the visions escalated. Go to France, they commanded. Raise the siege. Drive out the English. Crown the Dauphin at Reims. Joan, a 16-year-old farm girl in a patriarchal age, vowed chastity and obedience, interpreting these as God's mandate to save her suffering nation. Skeptics might dismiss them as adolescent fervor amid war's trauma, but Joan's contemporaries, including theologians, found no taint of heresy, only fervent orthodoxy. 54 EF8b. She confided in her village priest, then her uncle Durand Laxart, who saw in her a quiet resolve that bordered on the unearthly. Defying her father's rage, he'd sooner drown her than see her march to war. Joan set out in February 1429 for Vaucouleurs, the nearest royalist stronghold, 11 miles north. Dressed in boys' breeches for the perilous trek, a practical choice for disguise and mobility, not defiance, she petitioned Captain Robert de Baudricourt. I am sent by God to raise the siege of Orléans and crown Charles, she declared. Baudricourt scoffed, sending her home with a slap on the cheek. Undeterred, Joan returned weeks later, her prophecy of a French defeat at the Battle of the Herrings, February 12, 1429, proving eerily accurate. Convinced, perhaps by the prophecy, perhaps by her unyielding gaze, Baudricourt furnished an escort of 6 men-at-arms. On February 13, Joan departed, traveling 350 miles through enemy lines in 11 days, arriving at Chinon Castle on March 6. There, in a throng of courtiers, she unerringly picked out the disguised Dauphin, whispering a secret prayer he'd made at the chapel of Firebois. Doubts of his legitimacy, born of rumors that his mother, Isabeau of Bavaria, had cuckolded his father. Charles, a melancholic 26-year-old dithering in luxury amid military despair, was shaken. E86,257. Church authorities in Poitiers grilled her for 3 weeks. Was she a witch? A fraud? Joan answered with childlike directness, I wear armor because I am a soldier of God. My proof will be in deeds, not words. Cleared of sorcery, her banner, emblazoned with Jesus Maria and lilies, bore no occult symbols. The Dauphin relented. On April 9, 1429, Joan donned white armor, a pageboy crop, and her prophesied sword from Firebois, leading 5,000 troops to Orléans. The city, key to Loire control, had endured siege since October 1428, its 7,000 defenders starving against 12,000 English under the Earl of Suffolk. Joan entered under cover of night on April 29 with supplies, her presence igniting morale. In God's name, she cried, go forward. The place will be yours this very night. On May 4, she stormed the fort of St. Leu. May 6, the Augustins' bastion. Wounded by an arrow to the shoulder on May 7 at Les Tourelles, she pulled it out, rallied the faltering assault, and scaled the walls. By May 8, the English fled, their aura of invincibility shattered. Orléans liberated, Joan refused to fight on the holy day, kneeling in prayer as trumpets blared victory, E23F7F. Emboldened, Joan pivoted to her greater mission, the coronation. With the Duc d'Alençon as her steadfast ally, she swept the Loire Valley. Jargeau fell June 12 after a bloody rampart assault, where Joan, struck by a stone to the helmet, urged, "Up, and let the English go to hell." Beaugency surrendered June 17. At Patay on June 18, French cavalry routed 5,000 English in 10 minutes, killing 2,200 with minimal losses, a reversal of Agincourt. Northward marched 12,000 toward Reims, 300 miles through hostile Champagne. Joan dictated bold letters, to Troyes, "Surrender or face the King of Heaven," to the English, "Go home, or I will make you." Towns yielded without fight, Troyes after a bloodless siege, Chalon by acclamation. On July 17, 1429, in Reims Cathedral, Charles VII was anointed, Joan at his side, her banner unfurled beside the altar. She knelt, tears streaming, "Gentle king, God's will is done." France had a legitimate monarch, the war's tide turned. 8 DCC-4F. Yet triumph soured swiftly. Charles, wary of Joan's populist fervor and the influence of his scheming favorite Georges de la Tremoille, dithered. Paris, English held since 1420, beckoned, but the king favored negotiation. Joan, ever the warrior, assaulted its walls on September 8, 1429, from Saint-Denis. A crossbow bolt pierced her thigh. Amid the rout, she lamented, "Must a woman do what men fear?" The army withdrew, disbanding at Gien. Joan pressed on alone, capturing Saint-Pierre-le-Moutier in October with a ragtag force, but La Charité-sur-Loire stalled for lack of funds. Ennobled by Charles in December, her family now d'Arc de Domremy, she wintered uneasily, visions warning of peril. Spring 1430 brought doom. Hearing Compiègne besieged by Burgundians, Joan rode north with her brother Pierre and a small retinue, against Charles's orders. On May 23, leading a sortie, she repelled 2 waves but, covering the retreat, was enhorsed by archers under Lionel of Vendôme. Captured at Margny-les-Compiègne, she fetched 10,000 gold crowns from the English, who saw her as a propagandistic prize. Imprisoned first at Beaurevoir Castle, Joan twice attempted escape, once leaping 70 feet from a tower, surviving with bruises. By November, she languished in Rouen, chained in a cell under the bishop's eyes, guarded by lecherous English soldiers who attempted assaults. Male attire, her only shield, became Exhibit A in her undoing. 5 EF3EF. The trial, from January to May 1431, was ecclesiastical theatre orchestrated by Bishop Pierre Cauchon, a Burgundian turncoat bent on discrediting Charles. In Rouen Castle's chapel, before 40 assessors, Joan faced 70 articles of heresy, sorcery, blasphemy, cross-dressing, false prophecy. Chained and isolated, she endured 10 interrogations, answering 100 questions with poise. "My voices come from God," she insisted. "They told me to wear armor for safety." Witnesses were cherry-picked, appeals to the Pope denied. On May 24, at Saint-Ouen, after a vitriolic sermon branding Charles illegitimate, Joan, exhausted, threatened with torture, abjured, signing a cross in tears, "I submit to Holy Mother Church." Sentenced to perpetual imprisonment in women's garb, she complied briefly. But days later, guards stole her dress, leaving men's clothes. Resuming them, she declared her abjuration coerced. "My voices were right, I had relapsed." On May 29, the tribunal condemned her as a relapsed heretic to secular arms. Charles, safe in Paris, lifted not a finger. 1 C7260. Dawn of May 30 broke over Rouen. At 19, Joan confessed to Friar Martin Ladvenu, receiving communion in white robes. Led to the Vieux Marché stake, a Dominican thrust a crucifix before her eyes as flames rose. "Jesus, Jesus," she cried, forgiving her accusers. Witnesses, assessors, guards, sobbed. One judge murmured, "We have burned a saint." The executioner, haunted, later swore her heart wouldn't burn, a sign of purity. Her ashes scattered in the Seine to quash relics, but tales spread, a pure maiden martyred by malice. Vindication came slowly. By 1449, as French forces reclaimed Rouen, Charles VII commissioned a retrial. In 1452, amid testimonies from survivors, assessors admitting bias, guards confessing traps, the inquiry exposed Cauchon's farce. no impartiality, fabricated charges, rape baiting to provoke, relapse. On July 7, 1456, the verdict rang, Joan innocent, her judges heretics. Beatified in 1909, canonized May 30, 1920, by Benedict XV as France's patron, her feast now echoes in May meadows. Joan of Arc, the peasant who toppled empires with faith, endures not as myth, but as testament. One voice, divine or defiant, can ignite a nation's soul. Her legacy. From Schiller's plays to Mark Twain's adoration, she embodies the eternal clash of conviction and power, proof that even in chains, a girl's fire outshines